Think of all the horrendous teams and franchises you've had the pleasure of watching over the span of your NBA fanhood. Now, think of the cause or the reason why these franchises have suffered for so long. It's mostly due to, bad decisions made by the front office. Nico Harrison. But very rarely is it due to a decision made by a single player. And that is the topic of this video. We're going to take a look at how a decision from these players caused the impending downfall of their respective teams. A downfall that saw them spiral into the pit of NBA mockery for many, many years. Some of them have still yet to recover, and are still suffering from the ramifications of one decision by a single player. How did it happen, and why were these decisions so damaging to their franchise? Without further ado, let's get started. Steve Francis leaves Vancouver. In 1995, the NBA announced there would be 2 new expansion teams ready to join the league, both of which would be located in Canada. As you know, with any expansion team, you start off really, really bad. You don't have any good players, you don't have much of a culture around the team because you're trying to get it off the ground. It takes years, sometimes decades, to establish a solid foundation in a city, to attract fans in the city and across the world to cheer for your team. But it can also be very quick if you draft the perfect player to launch your team to the global stage. That's what happened with the Toronto Raptors. In 1998, they drafted Vince Carter. The young, high-flying superstar quickly became a household name across the country, and thus the Raptors became a well-recognized basketball team, with everyone in Canada cheering for them. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for the Vancouver Grizzlies. Now, the Grizzlies had several chances to draft that penultimate player to elevate them on the world stage. First, they had the 3rd pick in the 1996 draft, the most star-studded class of that decade, filled with piles upon piles of stars and superstars. But they used that 3rd pick to draft Sharif Abdur-Rahim.
Left side, down to Sharif on the baseline against Thomas, fakes high, goes low, behind the back dribble, up with the lay, and it's good, and what a nifty play.
A great player, an all-star, but not exactly super exciting to watch, and probably the most forgotten number 3 pick in history. A year later, they drafted Antonio Daniels at number 4. The year after that, Mike Bibby at number 2. Great players, but none of them gave the impression that they could be that guy. The guy who Vince Carter was for the Raptors. Enter the 1999 NBA Draft. Steve Francis, also known as Stevie Franchise, was one of the most anticipated hype prospects in the entire country. That's why they called him Stevie Franchise, because he was gonna come and save the Vancouver Grizzlies. With Elton Brand going first to the Chicago Bulls, the Grizzlies were up next. They used their number 2 pick to select Francis, hoping he'd live up to his nickname and become the player they dreamed he'd become. A franchise-altering superstar who'd inject a brand new life, a brand new culture and image into Vancouver, and catapult their basketball fandom to new heights. That was the ultimate goal for this franchise. Except, immediately after draft night concluded, Francis made a public announcement.
Unfortunately for the Grizzlies, the expression on Francis's face spoke volumes.
9 hours to get to Vancouver. I'm like, man, how's my family gonna come see me? How am I gonna be able to go home, see my family? They really didn't have a concrete answer for me, like where I was gonna play.
Steve held out. He demanded a trade.
Oh, you could tell when he got drafted, he was not happy. Dude's almost about to cry. Francis wanted out, citing several reasons. Vancouver was too far from his home state of Maryland, and it would be too hard for him to visit his family. The main reason, however, was that he did not want to share a backcourt with Mike Bibby, and potentially have to play shooting guard. He wanted to be a point guard, the primary playmaker, and for him, this was just not a good fit. With Vancouver not even being an option for him, Francis demanded a trade before his rookie year even started, or else he would not report to the team. The Grizzlies had no choice but to honor his request, sending him away in a colossal trade, which saw them get a handful of role players in return. Sadly, without Francis giving the franchise a boost, the Grizzlies were losing money fast. Attendance continued to drop, and drop, and drop, until the owners had no choice but to relocate the team to somewhere else, Memphis. Perhaps this was destined to happen regardless. Francis did not develop into the superstar caliber player everyone hoped, and had he stayed in Vancouver, it would have only delayed the inevitable. Also, here's a funny story. 10 years later, Francis found his way back to the Grizzlies in a trade. Now located in Memphis, Francis still showed no interest and immediately got waived, thus ending his NBA career at the age of 31. Ironically, I guess you could say, he technically is one of a handful of players who started and ended his career on the same team, the Grizzlies, despite never having played a single game for them. Dwight Howard requests a trade. On December 14, 2011, reigning 3-time Defensive Player of the Year Dwight Howard requested a trade from the Orlando Magic.
Dwight, are the stories true about?
Come on, man. Yeah, the stories from Dave Ping are true.
On the surface, this trade request doesn't seem so complicated. I mean, plenty of superstars in the past have requested trades before. What makes this so different? This time, it was different. Dwight Howard's entire trade saga was given the moniker Dwightmare, due to the notorious publicity of this deal, as it was the prime example of how not to request a trade. His value was tanking by every week that's gone by. Above all else, however, when Dwight requested this trade, everyone knew Orlando's days of competing for the title were over. They spent 7 years building a roster around Dwight's skill set. They were arguably the first team of the modern era to take advantage of the three-point shot at a level unseen in years past. This team was revolutionary, and it was all built on the back of Dwight's huge shoulders. Without him, there was no Orlando Magic. Not only did his trade request basically kill the leverage the Magic had, but the timing and circumstances were horrendous. Dwight, for most of his career leading up to the trade request, was the golden boy of the NBA. People used to like him far more than they liked LeBron.
Put it on, right? Josh.
You win, young fella!
So this negative publicity damaged his image, and it was when folks started to realize, okay, Dwight isn't the nice guy we thought he was. Because of this whole Dwightmare saga, people around the league figured he was a head case, and he had plenty of attitude problems that weren't seen before. As his career progressed, bouncing from team to team, that perception turned out to be correct. To make matters worse, when the Magic finally traded him in the 2012 offseason, he was on the last year of his contract, so his value was at an all-time low. In the trade to Los Angeles, the Magic received 3 future first-round picks in return, which honestly doesn't seem like much, considering they gave up a top 3 player in the league in the middle of his prime. In hindsight, knowing that Dwight bounced after 1 year, the Lakers got fleeced as well. The aftermath of the Dwight trade, however, turned into a catastrophe. The Magic missed the playoffs for 6 straight seasons, and went from a contender to a perennial 20-win team. Over these years, they slowly accumulated talented young players, a core of Nikola Vucevic, Aaron Gordon, and Evan Fournier. Unsurprisingly, not a core that can compete during a time when super teams were popping up left and right. It took the Magic over a decade to recover, and even then, they're still in the process of recovering. There's still a lot of rebuilding left to be done. Bradley Beal asks for a no-trade clause. Hilariously, Beal might have the notorious distinction of destroying 2 franchises with one decision. Perhaps the blame should go to the Wizards organization for giving him a no-trade clause in the first place. Regardless, this decision by Beal to negotiate a no-trade clause in his contract put the final nail in the coffin for the Wizards, as it guaranteed that this perennially mediocre franchise would stay in the same spot for years to come. For a team that should have went into rebuilding mode a long time ago, probably when John Wall left the team, by keeping Beal, the Wizards had no other reason than to hopefully sell some tickets and not drop to the bottom of the league. That happened anyway. Upon signing his massive contract with the Wizards, Beal made some, cliche statements, like, "I want to win a championship in Washington, D.C., and I'd die in a Wizards jersey." But coming from him, this was laughable. It was obvious he only cared about the money he got offered, a gargantuan 5-year, $250 million deal, which at the time made him the 5th highest paid player in the entire league. Beal also admitted no other team offered him anything except for the Wizards, and to have the balls to ask for a no-trade clause on top of that? Damn, he must have the best agent in the world. When he signed that contract, the consensus around the league would be, oh, the Wizards are now stuck with Beal for 5 years. Cause there's no way anybody would want him, not on this kind of salary. It also sucked for the Wizards cause as much as we like to mock him, if Beal remained on the roster, they wouldn't have gone into full tanking mode, cause he'd lead them to like 35 wins every year. The Wizards found a team even dumber than they were, the Phoenix Suns. On the downside though, they really didn't get much back in return for Beal. Due to his no-trade clause, Beal had all the leverage to go wherever he wanted, and his heart was in Phoenix. So the Wizards had no choice but to negotiate with only Phoenix, who didn't have many assets to begin with, cause, just look at their team. In return, they didn't get a single first-round pick. Instead, they got 4 pick swaps, plus a bunch of seconds. Instead, Wizards fans are subjugated to watching Jordan Poole do whatever the hell he wants. For the Suns, it might be even worse. Matt Ishbia, a new, overzealous owner, had new money to throw onto the team. Normally, a contract like Beal's should be untradeable, but he thought otherwise. For a team that sorely needed more depth, more bigs, and more versatility, Beal was probably the worst fit they could have gotten, especially at $50 million per year. With the Suns' so-called super team, the reality was this super team was destined to fail from the start. And from the looks of it, they have failed. And just like the Wizards, the Suns are going to be in for a rough rebuild in the future. Oh, they're gonna be in for a rough future. Kawhi Leonard sits out his final year in San Antonio. A franchise known for its consistent dominance looked like they were going to have yet another franchise superstar. From David Robinson to Tim Duncan to Kawhi Leonard. All 3 humble yet low-key superstars among the best of their generation. In the 2017 playoffs, the Spurs built up a tremendous 20-point lead in Game 1 against the Warriors, before Kawhi went down with an ankle injury, and that single moment changed the franchise forever. But it wasn't just that injury in itself. Kawhi's recovery process became the central conversation through most of the 2017-18 season. Initially, his ankle problems should not have taken this long for him to heal from, but then it was his quadriceps, a condition diagnosed as quadriceps tendinopathy, a condition that some folks never fully recover from. While the Spurs medical staff cleared him to play, Kawhi's inner circle, led by, Uncle Dennis, they didn't want him to play. His own personal doctors and friends decided it was best not to play, and continue to sit out. Until now, Kawhi was never the center of any kind of controversy. In fact, none of the Spurs superstars have ever been. But his actions during this 1 year alone tanked his image in San Antonio, and all of a sudden, fans started to sour on their once beloved franchise player. As the summer of 2018 quickly approached, the contempt towards Kawhi got stronger and stronger. With him feeling disrespected by the organization, heck, even his own teammate, Tony Parker, mentioned he had the same injury as Kawhi, but he was very quick to recover, taking a subtle shot at Kawhi. Regardless of whose fault it was, the fact is, Kawhi decided to sit out the entire year and he demanded a trade. And the Spurs had no choice but to find the best deal possible as soon as possible for a player who was about to start the final year of his contract. To make matters worse, he also had no ambitions to play anywhere but Los Angeles, his home city. This left them in such a huge disadvantage. Their franchise player made it clear he's gonna leave, and they gotta find a team that would basically take on a 1-year rental of Kawhi, with an almost guaranteed possibility that he'd be gone afterwards. The Raptors, however, saw this as an opportunity. By trading away their own franchise player, DeMar DeRozan, it was enough to get Kawhi. And despite everything DeRozan gave to the Raptors knew that 1 year of Kawhi Leonard gives them a better chance to win the title than 10 years of DeMar DeRozan. This was their chance, and so they pulled the trigger and their plan worked. Unfortunately for the Spurs, the only thing they got back was a couple years of mediocrity. Without Kawhi on the roster, everyone knew there was no chance that this team could compete for the title in the foreseeable future. Yet they lucked out, as always.
And that means that the #1 pick in the 2023 NBA draft goes to the San Antonio Spurs.
The San Antonio Spurs.
Had they not gotten the first pick that year, the Spurs might have been stuck at the bottom of the standings for a long time. A core of Aldridge and DeRozan was clearly not the answer, and a young core without Wembanyama, they had very little hope to build a winning team. There was a real chance had they not lucked into Wembanyama, they could have struggled for the next decade. Heck, even if they got the second or third pick, there was no other generational talent in the 2023 class. The fact that they recovered so quickly and found their guy is a once-in-a-lifetime miracle. Anyway, that's all folks. Those were several franchises who basically got destroyed by the decision of a single player, and it took them so long to recover. Some of them are still recovering. Let me know in the comments, can you think of any other situations where a single player leaving had such a traumatic impact on their franchise? What are your thoughts? Thank you all so much for watching, and of course, as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.